My name is Stufflebeam, and I'm a certified ethical hacker. The main advice I'd give to anyone reading about ransomware in an organization that's concerned about it is, number one, training. Usually the initial way into a network is almost always a social engineering attack, phishing, vishing, spear phishing, all of that. And that's usually how they use initialization to get in. Now, once you're in, the ransomware can take over. So if you can cut that off, if you can train your people to truly understand how to avoid being compromised, then that alone will lower the attack vector tremendously. The other big thing is taking proper backups. So if you have a proper backup procedure and policy in place, then if a ransomware attack does happen, you can cut it off and you can restore your network back to business as usual fairly quickly. Honestly, the most concerning part about the ransomware trends is that this has been an ongoing issue for years and years, and it's still continuing, and it's actually almost progressing. It's ramping up. To me, that's extremely concerning because that means that their business model, as far as the attackers go, is working, and that's more alarming than the ransomware itself, because when you see a business model that works, especially in a crime industry, you're going to see more people join that train because it's easy money in their eyes. And to me, that's the most alarming, not the ransomware itself, but the fact that it's climbing and the fact that more people are starting to get into this industry and that it's not going to go away anytime soon at this rate. I personally don't think companies should pay the ransom. Now, I understand there are case-by-case basis. If your company can't afford to not pay the ransom, meaning you can't afford to restore your network, then obviously you have to do what's best for your company. I would never pay the ransom simply because the reason the business model is working, the reason ransomware is still going on today is because they are getting paid. They are making money off of this. So if we can cut that out, if we could stop everyone from paying that, then that business model no longer works, and they would have to find either a different reason to attack companies, or they would have to find a new solution for their profit. I don't believe that paying the ransom is a smart thing to do, simply because if one person did it to you, they may leave you alone, but there may be others that'll come as well, and you're now going to be vulnerable to that attack again. What do I feel the ethical approach is? I feel like the ethical approach is to not pay. Now, this is my personal opinion, the reason I think that is simply because if you pay, you just funded that resource to now go attack somebody else for the similar attack. So you're just continuing the trend. You're continuing to fund a company that is committing cyber crimes that is going to continue to do this until they stop getting funding from this or profit from this. So I personally think ethically, everyone should just not pay, but I understand that's not practical from a business standpoint, and I understand if you have to pay. Well, I think it's simple and not simple at the same time to understand why criminals aren't held accountable a lot of times in these cyber crimes. One of the big issues that a lot of people don't understand is, in order to do an investigation, let's say you steal $100,000. The investigation may cost $200,000 to actually pursue. So therefore, it doesn't make sense to pursue that person. Now, why would it cost so much? It's because you have to get legal action to other countries. You have to get subpoenas. You have to get proper documentation in order to go to those countries and start investigating and get those logs and things like that. So that alone is expensive. But besides that, you have to understand that not every country abides by the same laws. That's the most difficult for it. So an example is, if it's not illegal to attack, let's say, the US from your country, and then you attack us and we say, hey, one of our companies say, hey, we want to investigate this. Well, if you go and ask that country, hey, we would like to pursue this, we'd like to prosecute, and it's not illegal in that country, they're most likely not going to allow you to. It doesn't make sense for them to allow your laws to go into their country. So that's usually the most telling thing that you see. You see a lot of times that these criminals are doing this from a country that doesn't prosecute, doesn't issue any warrants for their arrest, and doesn't hold them accountable for hacking other countries, which is a big problem. The other reason, like I said, is usually funding. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but usually hackers are pretty good at hiding their tracks, in the sense that they're going to use multiple VPNs to multiple countries. And when that happens, you now have to pursue each one of those leads into each country, which means you have to negotiate and get proper documentation and things for each country that VPN entered, which then makes it extremely expensive and time consuming. And therefore, a lot of times it's not worth it, because you're not going to probably be able to prosecute that person, and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to do so from a government spending standpoint. If my company suffered a ransomware attack, there's a couple of things that I would do right away. First thing I do is try to minimize the attack surface, so I would make sure that they are segregated, whatever machines they took over, or whatever they've done already. From there, I would look for indicators of compromise from the beginning. So I would go back and start looking at how did they get in, when did they get in. The second I found where they got in and how they got in, I would obviously try to fix that, and then I would make sure we have good backups, because we keep good backups, and I would back our systems up to that point. I would not pay them, but therefore my company has the resources to fix these issues rather than to pay these criminals, depending on what the ransomware attack looks like. I think that the issue isn't that there's not resources to learn reverse engineering of ransomware. I think the issue is that it's not as well advertised as hacking. So hacking sounds cool. People associate it with movies and shows, and they more or less see it as a very interesting and cool career field. But in reality, dissecting malware is a totally different mindset, and it's very difficult to find people that enjoy that complex of a problem, where hacking, you get a direct result, you get into a machine, you get into a box, where dissecting malware, you may be spending months trying to find an issue, and even if you find it, you're going to try to publish that and hope that people fix their issues, which most of the time, as we know, people are behind on patching and things. So even if you find it, you may not help that much, and that's the hard thing. So that's why I think that people that do malware analysis are insanely talented. They're insanely smart individuals that deserve a lot more recognition than they get, because they have saved millions and thousands of dollars all over the world constantly, and they kind of fly under the radar. And I think that's our biggest issue, is not that we don't teach it, because if you look hard enough, you can find the resources. I think the hardest part is that it's not advertised as the cool career field, when in reality, they're the ones that are saving a lot of people. The biggest takeaway I got when taking CEH regarding ransomware was not only how big of an issue this is, because a lot of people hear about it here and there, but they don't realize how often these attacks occur. So that was a huge takeaway, because I didn't understand how complex the issue really was and how big the attack surface is out there. Now, the other big takeaway that I got from the ransomware is not only just how big these attacks are, but that it's not the initial, or it's not the ransomware that's the problem. It's the initial attack. It's how are they getting a foothold into your system. The ransomware can only work if they have access to your system. So if you can stop that initial attack, if you can look for the indicators of compromise and cut them off from the source, then the ransomware never can happen. So that was a huge takeaway from CEH, that I remember thinking to myself, well, why are companies allowing them that initial foothold? And I understand it's impossible to make your network 100% secure. I understand that. But at the same time, if we can do a better job at stopping advanced attacks from happening and getting an initial hold into your network, you can stop the ransomware from spreading, which is the real issue.